Lost in the flood, CEO James disappears and Diep waits in the night. The rain didn't fall that day, it poured. It came with a howling wind that bent bamboo and shook rooftops. The villagers had never seen water rise so fast. Roads vanished beneath rushing currents. Phones lost their signal. And somewhere out there, in the middle of the storm, James was missing. Diep stood by the window of the small shelter where the rescue team had gathered. Her hands trembled as she held onto the edge of the table, eyes fixed on the door, willing it to open, praying to see him. But the door remained shut, and James didn't come back. Hours earlier, James had left in the early afternoon. A nearby village was stranded, no food, no medicine. The CEO who once wore suits and closed billion-dollar deals now wore a raincoat and boots. He had insisted on helping deliver supplies himself. "I'll be back before sunset," he had said, pressing a kiss to Diep's forehead. "Just wait for me." But the sunset came and went. The skies grew darker. The river swelled. No one had heard from him since. The night of waiting, Diep tried to stay strong. She boiled ginger tea for the children, helped carry blankets to elders, anything to keep her hands from shaking. But inside, her heart was unraveling every time someone knocked on the door. Her breath caught. Every time a rescuer returned without James, her knees weakened. Outside, the wind screamed like it, too, had lost someone it loved. She walked to the small altar in the shelter's corner and lit a candle, whispering, "Please, guide him back to me." A heartbeat in the rain. At midnight, the storm began to calm. A few brave volunteers set out with flashlights and ropes, calling James's name. Diep stood near the shelter's steps, soaked to the skin, refusing to go inside. And then, a distant voice, a faint beam of light, two silhouettes, and a voice she would never forget. "Diep, I'm here." She ran, feet splashing through the mud, tears streaming down her cheeks. James stood there, exhausted, bruised, but alive, their arms wrapped around each other like roots clinging to the earth. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You never will," he replied, voice cracked but certain. The story's soul. That night, something changed forever. Not just between them, but in the hearts of everyone who watched. It wasn't just about survival. It was about choosing each other, even when everything else drowns. In the flood, James found something more valuable than any contract, the unbreakable bond of love. And Diep, in the quiet ache of worry, discovered her courage, not in the absence of fear, but in loving someone through it. Safe, but not the same. The night after the storm, the wind had quieted, but the memories still howled. James sat on the wooden bench outside the shelter, wrapped in a wool blanket. His boots were soaked, his hands scraped, and his body ached with every breath, but his eyes never left Diep.
She was inside, speaking gently to a frightened child, her voice softer than the rain still dripping from the leaves. There was mud on her skirt, her hair was messy, and her eyes were red from crying yet to James. She looked like the only light in the world when she finally stepped outside, carrying a cup of warm rice porridge. He tried to stand. She shook her head and knelt beside him instead.
"Eat," she said, placing the cup in his hands. Her voice wavered. "You stayed up all night." He replied, "I would have stayed up 100 nights," she whispered, "if that meant seeing you come back." James looked down at the cup, then at her. "There was a moment," he said slowly, "when I thought I wouldn't make it. The river carried the truck off the road. I had to swim." Diep's hand reached for his. "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I felt it." They sat there in silence, the world hushed around them. The shelter behind them buzzed with quiet murmurs, people resting, some praying, others whispering thanks. But outside, on that worn bench, hearts found peace. Morning comes with a new light. When the sun finally rose, it cast golden rays over the waterlogged fields. Birds returned to the trees, and life, in all its fragile beauty, began again. James stood beside Diep, looking over the village. Volunteers were clearing debris, rebuilding. The CEO, who once knew boardrooms and billion-dollar mergers, now understood something deeper. "This," he said, pointing to the people working together, "is what matters." Diep smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Not every storm comes to destroy," she said. "Some come to remind us who we are." He turned to her. "Let's stay for a while. Help them rebuild. Forget the flight. Forget everything else. We belong here now, together." And she nodded. Days turned into weeks. The floodwaters had long receded, but their mark remained on the land, on the homes, and in the hearts of those who had lived through it. Yet amid the broken roads and fallen trees, something beautiful had begun to grow: hope. James rolled up his sleeves every morning. No suits, no meetings, no boardroom titles, just a man with calloused hands, hammering nails into wooden beams, lifting sandbags, and rebuilding walls brick by brick. Diep was always nearby, tending to the elderly, cooking meals in the makeshift kitchen, drying clothes under the sun. Children gathered around her, drawn by her gentle voice and warm smile. She had become a quiet guardian of the village, a thread stitching hearts back together. One afternoon, as they stood side by side watching a new house frame go up, Diep turned to James and asked softly, "Do you miss your world, the city, your company?" James paused, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked at her, her cheeks flushed from the heat, her hair pinned loosely beneath a straw hat. "No," he replied honestly. "This is my world now, because you're in it." Her eyes welled up, but she blinked quickly, smiling instead. A lantern for the future. That night, the villagers held a small ceremony. Lanterns were lit in honor of the lives lost and the resilience found. As dozens of glowing orbs floated into the star-speckled sky, Diep and James stood together, holding one final lantern between them. "Make a wish," she whispered. "I don't need to," James said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Everything I could have wished for is already right here." Together, they released the lantern. It rose higher and higher, carrying with it the memory of pain and the promise of a new beginning. And in the quiet that followed, with only the sound of crickets and soft wind, Diep gently reached for James's hand. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Because when love is born from a storm, it is unshakable, steady as the earth, fierce as the flood, and eternal as the stars. The village was finally quiet again. The muddy roads had dried. Children laughed freely once more. The echoes of rushing water were replaced by birdsong, and lanterns no longer floated in mourning. They glowed in celebration. But for Diep and James, a new question lingered in the silence of each night. What now? They sat on the front porch of a half-rebuilt house one evening, watching the golden sun dip below the horizon. James's shirt was torn from days of labor. Diep's hands were rough from cooking for hundreds of displaced villagers. He looked at her, eyes soft with something more than admiration, something deeper, something he hadn't known he was capable of before he met her. "Diep," he said quietly, "I came here to save people, but I think I was the one who needed saving." She turned to him, surprised. "I had everything," he continued, "power, wealth, a life most people only dream of. But I was lost. Then you walked in, and suddenly, I saw the world through your eyes, simple, kind, honest. You taught me what it means to truly live." Diep's voice trembled. "I'm just an ordinary girl, James." He shook his head. "No, you are extraordinary. You don't even realize it." One morning, a black car arrived. It was his assistant from the city, holding out a sleek folder and a cell phone. "Sir, the investors want you back. The board is unstable without you. The company needs its CEO." James took the folder. His fingers hesitated over the seal. The city called money, power, status. It was the world he once ruled. But he looked at Diep, standing barefoot in the dewy grass, helping a child tie his shoelaces. He closed the folder. "I'll go back," he said to his assistant, but not alone. Diep turned toward him, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" James walked to her, gently taking her hands. I want you to come with me, not just as someone I love, but as my partner in life, in everything." She looked down, unsure. "Are you sure, James?" she whispered. "My world is so different from yours." He smiled. "Maybe that's exactly what my world needs." Life lesson: love, courage, and the power of choosing each other. Sometimes, life leads us into unexpected storms, not just the kind that flood rivers and break roads, but the kind that shake our hearts and challenge our beliefs. Diep, a humble village girl, and James, a powerful CEO, came from two completely different worlds. They spoke different languages of life, one from simplicity, the other from ambition. But when disaster struck and everything seemed uncertain, they found a new truth. True strength is not measured by wealth or power, but by the courage to care. When James got lost in the flood, it wasn't his money that saved him. It was Diep's love and unwavering hope. When the village suffered, it wasn't a business deal that restored it. It was the unity of people who had little but gave everything. And most importantly, when the world gave them a choice between comfort and compassion, they chose each other. The greatest lesson from their journey is this: in life, the most meaningful path is not always the easiest one. It's the path you walk hand in hand with someone who believes in you, not for who you are in the eyes of the world, but for who you are in their heart. No matter how different our backgrounds may be, love, when rooted in kindness and respect, can overcome storms, distances, and even fear. As the floodwaters rose, so did the quiet courage inside Diep. She didn't wear a uniform or carry a title, but her heart became a lighthouse for those in darkness. In every bowl of hot soup she gave, every comforting word she whispered to frightened children, she showed us a deeper truth. Heroism is not about being fearless, it's about choosing love even when you're afraid. James, once lost in numbers and deals, found something far more valuable than profit: the purpose of his success. It was never meant just to build skyscrapers, but to protect, to uplift, and to give back. His journey through fear, rain, and uncertainty humbled him. He understood that real leadership begins where ego ends, in service to others. Together, Diep and James reminded us that when disaster strikes, what saves us is not status, but solidarity. When love is tested, it grows deeper, wiser, and more true. And when life offers us comfort or conscience, choosing compassion will always lead to light. In the end, the greatest flood was not the river outside, but the flood of change within. And through it all, Diep and James discovered the kind of strength that no storm can wash away, the strength of a heart that chooses love again and again.